All right, well, let's jump in. These are our learning outcomes. Everyone is able to see these. Courtney, I don't know if you wanted to jump in and share anything about this, but these are our learning outcomes for the day that will really guide us in our process and as we share and learn together. Like I said, I'll be sharing on career decision making, and these are really a couple of the main takeaways that I'm hoping everyone in this space is able to have today when we think about majors, career decisions, and that whole process. So we're also going to be talking about strategies and resources as well with that. And I'll let Sam and Alex share a little bit more about their objectives as it gets closer.
Yes, so the NACE career competencies is kind of what we use to guide kind of all of our practices within the Career Center and career and professional development. And we want to give you an insight of what these specifically are and what they look like, as well as how to talk about them with your students and what transferable skills they might be getting, be it in academics, in volunteer leadership work, in their part-time work, or just working with your offices. And then, of course, with resumes, making sure that you guys feel comfortable with being able to help students with those initial questions of how do I put this job that I'm working with you on my resume, or where's a good place to start to have those early conversations.
Finally, we'll jump into job search strategies and the handshake system. So we will talk with you all about how you can explain strategies to students to help them be successful in the job search, the internship search. Primarily, we're going to focus on job searching, but we'll try to tie in grad school when applicable. And then we're going to also run through Handshake, which is our job board here at LSU. And so we will show you all how to access that and what it looks like from a student's perspective as they start the job search process.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it off. This first hour is really dedicated to career exploration, career decision making. You'll hear our office use different ways to explain this. But we're really just glad that you're here. I'm very honored just to be able to share on this topic. I think I can probably speak for Sam and Alex and share that we were able to do this a couple weeks in person, and this is virtual. So we do encourage participation, whether it's through the chat or through sharing your screen or making yourself heard today. I think the wonderful thing about a lot of what we do is that a lot of these experiences are things that y'all have gone through, and you've all provided your own questions and your own kind of perspectives on this for today. So do you know that even when it comes to the topic of career decision making and exploration, in a sense, we have a lot of experts in the room because you're the expert of your life and you've had this process yourself. My objective today is really to share a lot of things that will hopefully help you in your process and encouraging students and talking to students about this topic. Whether you work with students very directly on a one-on-one basis, maybe you do it indirectly through your department, or you even just find ways to use some of these tools outside of the confines of LSU. So yeah, at any point, definitely feel free. I'm very open with my presentation style. Feel free to unmute or ask questions or use the chat. I want to share a little bit more just about why this work is important, and a lot of things that I connect with a lot with this work of helping students clarify and narrow down some of their decisions and get engaged in this exploration process. And these are the big ones. Maybe you have your own, but the huge one that's really powerful is this is really exciting work that we get to do every day, and something that we're happy to partner with everyone else on campus with. We get to really influence career and life trajectories in the really simple, small tasks and the really big ones. But I think especially when it comes to students exploring their futures, it's a really powerful thing to be able to be a part of. So even if it feels like it's a simple question or a mundane thing, just know that there's ripple effects, even when it comes to social capital and confidence and all these other factors that you can really be a part of with this. I love the work because we are really able to meet students where they're at, right? We're able to affirm their story and their experiences. And ultimately, I think a lot of what we do in this office is work to build confidence and work to build hope in any way that we can. And that looks different student to student. So we love to talk about story here, and that's really what we're trying to get to is students getting to their story and being able to know what it means for them. I love the interconnectedness of this work. So we talk a lot with campus partners, whether, yeah, it's a health center, it's a UREC, it's, oh man, it's all these different campus partners. And we just know more and more that career is just something that we hear in a lot of different spaces in different ways. And students will come and talk to people, will come and talk to people in our office, and we'll realize everything just seems like it's so integrated in the college experience. So we definitely noticed that as well. We are part of the Division of Student Affairs. So we do know that these priorities are all very significant to us. And we believe that if we do this exploration work really well, both in the Career Center and outside of it, that will meet some of these objectives. We do really great quality work. Students will really feel like they matter and belong in their major, in groups, in clubs, kind of whatever they're really involved with. And if we do our work really well, we're gonna really change the way students view themselves and view it's possible, and it's gonna open up doors and opportunities, hopefully, for students that makes career much more inclusive and holistic for a student. So we really feel like we connect with all three of those. And ultimately, hopefully, this leads to greater retention efforts and students really feeling like LSU is their home and that they can feel successful here. So we love this work. It has very small daily kind of implications, and we also feel like it has really big ones too. And we break it down into a lot of different pieces. So the first one that we'll kind of dive into a little bit today, that a lot of students will ask about is, how do I know myself, or how can I make this choice, whether it's a major or career path, or just something to get involved with? How can I know what that thing is? And this is the model that we use when we think of that. So we talk to students all the time, and I'd love to hear from y'all here in a minute. We talk to students all the time that will bring a lot of different factors that they're bringing into their equation, that they're bringing into their decision making, even how they want to explore this process and choosing something. And these are a lot of the big words that we hear a lot in just a lot of different ways. So we'll hear students talk about, they say they really want to be passionate about what they do. They really want to be excited and interested about it. They really want to feel like they're good at it, right? They really want to feel like it's something that they can be successful within because of their skill set. We hear a lot about sustainability and income and location and all these other different value sets that students will bring into their life as well. And personality is always very interesting. Students find that out, I feel like, a lot on the job experiences that they have and where they really feel like they connect and that the personality can thrive. So these are a lot of the different aspects that we hear about, and we really encourage students to think about when they're making these decisions. But I would love to ask y'all, these are the four, but what do y'all think are some of the things that are maybe outside of the confines of these circles that might really be influencing some of these things? Maybe it's something that you've experienced, something that you've noticed that really shapes some of these circles. And you can unmute and feel free to share, or we can use the chat.
I'll say so. I think a lot of students initially coming in aren't thinking as much about their own interests and more about like mom and dad's aspirations for them sometimes. So there's a lot of interesting conversations early in their college years about they came with a major that mom and dad or aunt and uncle or somebody had encouraged them to, but then they start looking at maybe more their own specific skills and interests or what have you. So
yeah, thanks for sharing, Renee. Yeah, I love that. Maybe something that their family is encouraging, and maybe the student is figuring out how they can fit into some of that encouragement. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Does anyone else want to share maybe a different perspective, a different idea, something that you've noticed?
Another thing I thought of is thinking about where opportunity lies, if there's a career path that might have more opportunities for them versus another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge one. And I think especially that makes it really relevant to today. And students, we hear a lot about what they've experienced in the pandemic or what they've seen Opportunity is a huge word. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. No, it's a couple more. This is great. Maybe a different way to think of this question too is what are some of the barriers, or what are some of the things that may be challenging for students to explore some of these things? That's maybe a different way to ask this question. Anything that you've noticed or that you've heard?
I'll comment. Sometimes it's a lack of exposure. And some students are first generation students also, so they really don't have any background or reference. And so it's all new to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I think we have a very diverse set of students on campus, right? And I think exposure is definitely something that we experience. And probably one of the things that I think a lot of our staff are very passionate about is how can we bridge that? How can we explore that? How can we encourage that? Yeah, with a first generation student, someone that might have certain scopes or certain mindsets about different types of careers and what they should go after. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Maybe one or two others.
For our international students, there's certainly the restriction of visa requirements and, all the sort of layers that come into that, and what field is more receptive to those that have those restrictions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so even just acting within the confines of some of the administration, some of those logistics. Yeah, that's a whole nother set of things that students have to think about. Awesome. Well, yeah, and if you didn't get to share, and if you'd still like to jump in, definitely use the chat. I think this is a very dynamic topic, right? We love talking about these work circles, but yeah, I think really when we think of our work and where we feel like we can be most effective is when we kind of get at kind of what's behind a comment, or what's behind the student maybe asking about why they can do something or can't. And we really like to explore those, right? So we talk a lot with students about their experiences, their backgrounds, growing up, their experiences with their parents and what they've been told, their identities and how that shapes a lot of how they view career or how they don't view career, right? So there's a lot of different pieces that really feed into some of these circles, and even just something as simple as a value system and what someone wants can be really impactful. So one student saying, I want to be secure financially, and another student saying it could have very different reasons for saying that. Maybe one of them has grew up in a single parent household and really saw the implications of that and the value of that. And maybe another had a different experience. So I think really seeing the student individually is something that's really going to be really powerful. And I'm sure some of you are experiencing that a lot in your own roles, and whether you supervise students or just interact with students, that's going to be something that's going to be really helpful for the process. We can talk today about so many different topics, right? We can talk kind of about the theory, the practice, and even just kind of the implications for all of us today. There's so many directions that we can go. I'm going to spend some of my time today kind of getting into some maybe skill sets and perspectives. And we're going to look a lot later on at resources and then kind of making it practical. So, but yeah, we love this conversation. This is something that we could spend an hour on, just kind of why do this work at all, right? But when I think of approaching this conversation, if a student says, hey Josh, what should I major in, or what do you think? These are a couple of the questions I might think of. And a lot of times I like to frame them in a way that encourages openness and encourages the conversation. So because of that, I like to use more how and what types of questions, usually over the why. I don't want to put the student on the defense, or whoever we're working with. So some examples of questions that I like to use with that, right? How do you feel about your current major? What is a problem that you want to solve in the world? I think that's something that a lot of students relate to right now, is fixing something or a problem or something that they notice. What experiences helped you learn a skill about yourself, or learn that you value this aspect of your life? Where have you learned that? What experiences have you had? what is exciting to learn about right now. So just in the immediacy of things, where they're really focusing some of their attention. And what's really exciting about this work is a lot of times that attention could come from TV, movies, books, a lot of those different Instagram, a lot of these other different places where students really find inspiration and they find connection. A lot of times it's in their daily life right in front of them. What do you imagine for your life in 5 or 10 years? So thinking of the future. There are so many different types of questions. Does anyone else have a question that they found themselves asking a student when they kind of have some of these kind of conversations? And again, feel free to use the chat or feel free to unmute yourself.
One thing you could ask is, have you done any volunteer work or internship work that was really exciting, that you feel like could be something you could go back to?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, really thinking of their experiences right now. We also talk a lot about high school. We see a lot of students that are, you know, first or second year students, and really thinking back to what were they involved in high school and what can they take from that or from that high school job. I think a lot of students can be dismissive of some of those experiences, but they can be really, they learn a lot of things in those experiences, and we like to try to get to those. Any other questions? That was great.
I think asking if there's anything they know that they're definitely not interested in, and then maybe finding out why they're not interested in that, and then kind of, you know, going from there. Because sometimes they might think they're not interested in something and they actually are. They just, you know, have only looked at it through a certain lens, or, you know, maybe there's certain reasons that they're not interested in something that could spill over into other career paths as well.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and sometimes by focusing on what you don't want, it kind of reveals what you do want, because maybe it's the opposite. And I like what you said on that second piece too. I think a lot of students might have, maybe they had a bad experience with a certain job or a certain person, and it can be really reflective of how they view that whole industry or that whole job. So and we'll talk a little bit more about more tangible ways to really explore some of this, but yeah, we always encourage more than one experience, because that can really change the whole perspective on what that's like. Maybe one more. Anyone else?
Maybe asking like, what are things that you value? What are some things that are fulfilling to you? And then kind of relate like, okay, how can we make that into a career? And like, how do you see that playing out? That's kind of what I think about.
Yeah, values. Yeah, that's huge. And I think values cover so much different space. It could be career values or life values. We actually have a values and skills sheet that I think you all got in your packet. So that's definitely one of the simpler assessments that we'll kind of share with students as a resource to explore that. Well, let's keep going. Yeah, it's great to see some friendly faces too today. These are just a couple things in general, I think, perspectives that I found along the way, and what I really look for and really trying to encourage students in this process. It can be really hard, and I think it's really important just to know that. So really what this slide is all about is places I feel like we can encourage, and whether you're a mentor or just if you have a happenstance interaction with a student, these are kind of some of the things that I like to encourage and look for. Maybe you have your own list as well. But especially when I think of students that are really looking to explore and find success in that, become self-aware and getting to know themselves. These are some of the words that really stand out and where I see students get that success. So I love ownership and permission. Those are really a lot of the things that I like to foster with students, is that they can own their own process and own their own experience that can be theirs, and that they have permission to explore wherever that might take them, right? And this can be, I asked a little bit earlier about restrictions or confines. For some students, that can feel really challenging with the role that parents or family or even friend groups might play in to how they're influencing them. I always encourage students to do a lot of these other things. A lot of times we'll hear students or alumni even just say, I'm not sure if I know myself very well. So people that success, or just people that are looking for more experiences, volunteering, asking questions, talking to people, student organizations. They just seek exposure. They like to try to do a lot of different things to get to know themselves better. And I think especially as the pandemic kind of starts to change, or people just feel like they have more freedom to kind of move around in that. I think students will get to experience even more of that. Students are very curious. I feel like that's something that really helps in this process is they challenge themselves, they challenge kind of what they know about themselves, and they just are very curious. We also hear with social media culture, these next 2 points are really tough. The comparison and kind of just seeing other people's successes, that can be something really challenging for people, especially when we live in a society that really looks at all the positives and the perfect life on social media. So this is something just to think about, and really just to encourage students to celebrate what's around them, and to fight the urge to compare, and if they do, kind of lean into those insecurities or what they might be experiencing. We'll also just talk about who's your network, who's your friend group, and how they're encouraging you to explore, and are they people that are really influential or good influences, or are they people that are not gonna help with that? A lot of these concepts are very growth oriented or growth mindset oriented, especially if you know much about that. That's something that I feel very excited about, passionate about. A lot of this kind of gets back to that. It's just how can you encourage the growth mindset at all times with students, and just always be looking for progress, steps forward, the big goals and the little goals. Don't be complacent, right? It's something I like to look at. Does anyone else have anything that they've noticed with students that they've seen success, right? Or they've seen a student do really well and trying to figure out their next steps, or students like to say, I want to figure out my life. Have you ever seen some qualities that helps them with that? And I'll just keep going and jumping in. But I think something that we really like to do is just find ways to inspire confidence and inspire hope too. I think especially when a student is going through that, or they're challenging what's been in the past, or they're just exploring. Those are things, qualities I'm always looking to provide, and just what I want to be when I'm entering that conversation, or just in that space. So if I could give you a couple things today, that'd probably be one of them, just to encourage that. Even if you don't know all the perfect answers, that's probably a really good place to start. We're going to transition a little bit now into resources and different ways that you can actually do a lot of this and encourage a lot of this with students. I'm going to go through a couple more slides and just kind of talk about just the scope of some of our resources, and then we'll kind of go from there and kind of get into some case studies and some practice. But these are a lot of our resources. I always say too, every student's different. Something I've noticed is some students are really driven. They really want to solve some of these kinds of questions. They want to answer a lot of what's going on in their life. They're really able to engage with a lot of these resources. Maybe that's part of their personality too. Some people are very different. While a lot of these resources are online or print, some people really are just looking for conversation or experience, right? Especially some of those extroverted students. So just know, I like to say too, there's no one size fits all with exploration, but these are probably a lot of the great resources to kind of start with, and just know that some students, they love it and it's really helpful. Others they might not love every single one of these resources. But I definitely want to share some of them with you so you can kind of see what feels like it'll be a really great fit when you're having these conversations and where students will benefit. We break it up into a couple different sections. So this is called the 5 Steps Guide. This is really helpful just to kind of break down at the high level, what are all the different resources. So if you kind of forget a lot of the things that we talked about today, this is probably one of the best places to go and just, oh, it's all right there. It's broken down into exploring who you are and yourself. The next piece is exploring the majors and different questions about that. And then the third piece is much more connected to the industry, career specific kinds of conversations, and that's the occupational part. Some of y'all might have heard of a couple of these resources. I'm going to share my screen and show them and how you can access a lot of these things today. But these are some of the main resources that we use for just general self-discovery, get to know myself, get to know who I am in this process. So I'll share a lot of those are all kind of under one tab on our website. One of those big ones is the assessments. So I don't know if anyone has taken them themselves or have questions about those. I'm happy to answer any questions about our assessments, but they are completely free for students. We have a couple that are very self-driven in the sense that students can access the results at any point. They can take the test live and kind of see a lot of it right there. Those are the focus 2 and the type focus. Those are great. There's a lot of different organizational pieces that students can do even past the assessment, ways for them to organize their thoughts or their goals or their next steps with this. Those assessments don't go quite as in depth into as far as just legitimate assessments, but they're great tools. We definitely recommend them very often. The other 2 that we have are called the Strong Interest Inventory and the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. Those ones, yeah, maybe some people in the room have experienced those personally, or have seen them. Those are both great. Those are a little bit more official, completely free for students. And I would say in general, the Strong is probably our most popular. That one's really very engaging, very interactive, really gets at kind of this question of major and career direction. So students really enjoy that one. And that's probably a lot of times if we're looking for a holistic kind of assessment, that might be the first one that we'll recommend. The Myers-Briggs is wonderful as well. I find that usually that's best for students that just are a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more looking to kind of engage on that personality level. That one's a very different flavor of an assessment, but still can be really interesting when you kind of overlap it with career and what that might mean for them. But those are assessments. I'll show you how to find them here in a minute. These are also available for faculty and staff if that's something that you'd ever like to participate in. We definitely are happy to do that as well. So if you don't have any questions about our assessments, I always like to say too, these are definitely not meant to be we call it a magic 8-ball or genie, anything like that. But we definitely see more as a tool and a facilitator for conversation for students that are looking to learn more about themselves and what it means for their choices. So that's definitely the way that we see it. So we try to encourage not to see it as the end all be all. What am I going to do with my major? But we like to use it as a vehicle for good conversation and seeing why the results say what they say. Is there any questions about those? We definitely get questions about our assessments often. Feel free to post in the chat as well. That might be another way to do questions. All right, let's keep going. The next portion, a lot of times for students, I think students really make their choices in a couple of different ways. We see a lot of students that will engineer their future almost in a way where they choose their major and then they try to find a career to fit with it. Whereas other students might look ahead to careers that they want to get and how they can figure out the right major to do. So I think both of those are very valid ways to explore and view the process. A lot of times it's often for students to kind of start thinking about majors next. So I'll share a couple resources that we really use with majors, and we'll actively get in and see some of them here in a minute. We are definitely not academic counselors, academic advisors. When it comes to kind of some of the nitty-gritty pieces of majors, we like to use some of these resources like the general catalog. There's a really cool tool called Explore Majors by Interest on our website as well. Those are great for just kind of some of the generic pieces of a major, just to get kind of familiar with it. If a student doesn't know much about the major or the field at all, if students want to go a little bit more in depth, what can I do with this major is a much more specific, lots of details, lots of really great pieces there. And then past that, definitely using our colleagues, academic advisors, to really get into more of the specifics if a student has questions. But if you're just looking to help a student just get to know kind of some basics, these are three of the best ones that we probably use every day. And then lastly, we have a couple different resources that we use all the time just to get to know career, get to know really what it's like, get to know how to experience it. Some of those on our website, some of them are ones that we'll use in different capacities as well. But one of those that really isn't kind of a resource, and probably one of the things that I find myself talking about very often is informational interviewing. And I'm guessing some people in the room might have heard of this, or even if you haven't, you probably do it all the time. But we really encourage this for all students, right? Whether it's a first-year student or someone graduating, or even an alumni thinking about their next steps. We get a lot of questions about students feeling just having a hard time feeling confident about a major or career choice. And a lot of that comes from not being able to experience it or see it or understand it, or maybe they have the perception of it that you're not sure is very accurate. So a lot of those things can be really worked through with, of course, with experiences and internships and those types of things that we'll talk about later. But when it comes to exploring informational interviewing, it's probably one of the best ways to do that. And essentially, it's just a kind of a low stakes networking info session way to really identify someone that is in a area of interest, whether it's an industry or a job specific, and looking for a way to just have a conversation with them. So we love this because it's low stakes. It definitely gets some ownership, and it's really great action for the student to take. A lot of times too, if you think about the LSU system, there's quite a few people on campus that do a lot of different things. So even when we talk to students about all these different interests that they might have, there's probably someone at LSU that does something similar to that. But this is something that they can think of in different ways, like LinkedIn or career events or their own personal networks or talking to us that they can look for as well. Yeah, it's a really way to get inside scoop on what that role is really like. We encourage students to think about what's important to them, what kind of questions they have, what kind of concerns they have, and really bring that into the conversation. The great thing too is if something like this can ever happen in person or in the office, students really get to have some context for what does that space look like, what does it feel like, not just add the whole other element to it as well. One of the things that we see come up with students is this problem, right? This is something that some people that are really great at networking just naturally do. Maybe they're raised in a way where this just happened naturally all the time, right? But these are opportunities that aren't really advertised. This isn't something that a lot of students know to seek out. So we really encourage people just to come alongside them and look for ways to do this, look for ways to introduce them to connections or connections of connections, right? So yeah, whether you're working with a student that's asking for this or thinking about this is definitely something that requires a little bit of work. So this is a great way that you could partner or just offer yourself as a resource to a student. Awesome. And we will get back to this in a second. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to look at a couple resources, and then with the rest of our time, we've got a couple of case studies, and we'll do that as well. So we'll keep going. This is our website. Hopefully everyone can see that right now, I'm guessing. Let me know, Alex or Sam, if it's not sharing for any reason, but this is our website, and a lot of incredible resources on here. I'll share some. I think the rest of our staff might come back to this as well. But a lot of what we use for our students to navigate it is under the Students tab and then Explore right here. And this is where a lot of the things that we have are. I'm just going to share this first tab really quick, just so you know where to find that 5 steps guide, because it's kind of a very central hub just to find a lot of other resources that we have. So this is the 5 steps, very clickable links. All the links that we'll probably look at today are either on here. There might be a couple that are on here as well, but if you take one resource away from this conversation today, this is probably the best one. We also have all of these different workshops and different types of opportunities that we have for students. This is linked directly to Handshake, so a student could go right into there and find all the different types of exploring events and group workshops and all these different fun things that we do. So let's go back here. We're going to start just in general with exploring self first. And a lot of these are right here. So this is the tab for all of our assessments. If you have further questions ever about those, or just want to get to know more about them, some of the context is right here just for what this assessment is, where to find them. A lot of people really access them directly through Handshake, which we'll get into a little bit more today. But Handshake is really where a lot of the instructions, the codes to actually get the assessments are. And then from there, students will either get them directly if it's one of these top 2, or it's something that they'll get by actually reaching out to the career account or setting up an appointment with us to get the results. So that's everything about assessments right there. Thinking about majors, and if people are kind of looking to explore majors, some of the resources I mentioned with that are right here. So this is a great one, especially if a student is looking not to be overwhelmed, right? They just want to do a really shallow dive into some ideas that they have. This is a great place to go. Maybe some of you have seen this before, but it breaks it down into kind of interest areas. I think it's really fun, really approachable for students, and they can go in and just find some of the basics. about the major, maybe hear a couple videos, get some perspective, hear about coursework that they're maybe expected to go through a lot of, and just find some of the kind of high level types of things about like concentrations in that major. So if the student's just looking to kind of explore a little bit, this is a great place just to start. So yeah, and this is also something that you can find on the RSU's website as well. So that. I mentioned, I don't think I've talked about these quite yet, but this is wonderful if a student is just looking to think more about an actual career, and they don't feel like they have a network, maybe they don't know anyone that is an accountant, or they don't have that perspective, they haven't quite made that connection yet, or maybe they're still just exploring online. This is a really simple way to actually hear real life stories about people's experiences and ways that they've really found that career field and what they like about it. And the great thing about it as well is if you click on something like accounting, for example, you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives. You're going to get a lot of different stories about it. We always encourage that. So it's not just one person's perspective of it, but it's a lot of different types of experiences and different types of accounting firms and different types of accounting. And you could repeat this process for just about any career field. So this is wonderful. It's very geared towards students, very short videos. But we really like that it really looks like getting a lot of different perspectives. I think that's really helpful for students. Keep going. We're going pretty quick through a couple of these. You can always circle back to any of these if you have questions, but want to give kind of a high level. What are the resources and what's kind of the point? This one's really powerful for students that are really exploring their major right here. So we get these questions all the time, right? What can I do with X degree, right? So that's something that we hear a lot of time, and a lot of what our work is problem solving, and kind of thinking about what can students do. So if a student was asking about just a general business degree or something like that, what can I do with that? I've heard so many different options. This is called What Can I Do with This Major? We access it directly through our website because we pay for it. But it's great. It's a very creative kind of a website, and gives a lot of the obvious kind of options that the students can expect to hear with their major path. But it's also going to do it in a way that's creative. We know, especially in society today, that you can get a lot of different degrees and then end up in a lot of different places. I'm sure that's true for a lot of us in this space right now. And this kind of encourages that and explains that a little bit. So students, I think they find a lot of confidence in this, especially if they're thinking about a major that they've only heard a couple different career paths for it. This builds a lot of that self-concept, just what they really feel like they can pursue. And it does in a creative way that hopefully doesn't make them feel limited. So this is a great way just to have that conversation of, you can probably get to just about anywhere that you want to get with most majors with the right kinds of intentionality and experiences and skill sets. This also has great resources connected to professional associations and different things like that, where students can find mentorship and really get connected to a field if they want to. Maybe two more, just to look through these, but the ONET and this one right here are wonderful for different reasons. The student is really looking, they feel confident in their major, but they're really exploring some different career types of ideas. They want to know some kind of industry trends. They want to know salaries for different areas. They want to know kind of expectations or what that job's really like. This is a great place to go and do this. Both this one and the ONET on a page are very connected to federal government, pretty up-to-date resources, pretty up-to-date statistics as well. So we'll just use that same example. But students can research just about any type of career. Sometimes it gets too specific, but they can look at just about any type of career and find a lot of pretty up-to-date information about what that field is like, whether it's pay or growth, how much staying power does that job have, right? That's something that we hear about a lot, and it does it in a way that breaks down a lot of information in a pretty easy way. Students can even go in and compare states, right? So if they're from Texas or a different state, or they're considering taking this major to a completely different part of the country, they could even track what that looks like to do it there. There's a lot of great features on here as well connected to, if you're really interested in accounting, you might really like some of this kind of stuff too. And that's kind of really similar to what our assessments do as well. So these are some great resources for students that are really looking to take kind of that next level and kind of get into some of the logistics and details of what they're hoping to do. Awesome. I skipped over this one. Let's get back to the catalog. I skipped over this one, but I mentioned the catalog as well a little bit ago. We use this not as academic counselors or advisors, but if we're looking for kind of generic questions, if students are asking about what's required, this is a great place to go. You can search up a major directly and get to know kind of the general course path, some of the major requirements for students to keep going on with that major, and you can explore any concentration, any major, any minor even through this website. So this is a great resource. I wouldn't say we're experts necessarily in all the logistics of it, but we know enough to navigate it and really use it as a way to maybe help students answer some of their own questions before they really get into it with the academic professional. I love to share as the last couple things, a couple really fun things that we do. A lot of students really like to engage in exploration in a way that feels really approachable, right? Maybe even hands-on or really dynamic, maybe even more so than some websites. If you have students like that are really looking for some of those opportunities, Forge is something that's directly on our website on the rotational bar. This is something that's kind of new and exciting. So some students might not have opportunity, access, time to go and do a full-on internship. But if they're looking to build some of their skill sets, or they're just looking to explore an industry that they don't know much about, this is a great way to actually do it. These are real companies and real simulations of actual internship experiences that students can go and do and see what it's really like to do some of those types of things. So if students are really looking for kind of that hands-on way to kind of try something out, feel what it's like, this is a great place to do it. This is called the Forage. This is on our website. There's a lot of companies that do some of this work, but this is one of our favorites. We also have this one. We have a library as well in the office, but we also use resources like Picture Your Career. These are a lot of mini exercises. If you have students that maybe they're creative, they want to use their hands and write, they want to journal, they want to do things like that. This is an incredible resource that we can share as well that really takes a lot of these big ideas and makes them into kind of digestible pieces where they can really write, engage, and dream a little bit. So this is really fun, very creative, something that a lot of our staff likes to do as well. I think those are all the resources. We did those really quick. But let's get back to the PowerPoint. Does anyone have any questions about those that we shared just now? Feel free to post them in the chat or unmute. Awesome. So great. Well, let's jump in. We've got a few minutes left. We're going to do a couple case studies in a minute here. Courtney is going to break up the room into smaller groups. So hopefully you can get to interact with each other and kind of hear from each other. I'm going to read this first case study. Hopefully I'll be able to share this in the chat as well, so you can, while you're breaking out in your rooms, that you can remember. But yeah, just so everyone can hear this one. We're going to use these as a way just to think of, what do you notice about this situation, and what do you think you'd really do if this happened in real life? So I'm going to read this out loud, and we'll go from there. The first generation student in their junior year that looks to you as a mentor comes to you distraught one day. I can't take it anymore, they say. I've always loved kids and wanted to be a teacher, but my family is always talking about how teachers don't make any money. I don't know what to do. So we're going to do breakout rooms. Hopefully you remembered some of the gist of what the challenge or the case study is. But when you're talking with your groups, think about what are some of the tools, what are some of the resources, and even some of the perspective that you might share with that student as they're looking into their next steps. So at this time, we'll do breakout rooms. We'll do this for about 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll do one more and keep going. All righty. Well, I think everyone's back into the room at this point, or close to it. But as we let everyone else join back on, I'd love to hear this. Hopefully I had some good conversation about this particular example. Does anyone want to share something that you thought was really helpful for this conversation, or that someone else shared maybe? Facilitators or other OCC staff we can share as well. But anyone like to share kind of how they view the situation, what they thought about it.
So in our room, one of the things we talked about first was just assessing that student's need and what their immediate concern is, right? So while yes, they are kind of in this career crisis of, maybe I don't want to be a teacher anymore. But we kind of went into that first mode of, well, my family's not supporting me in what I'm doing right now. So being there for that student in that aspect, outside of like the career development might be one of the first steps we take, right? How do you feel about being a teacher, and then we went into the resources, what can I do with this major? Is there something that's education adjacent? Looking at our values, and is money something that is of high value to us? Is it what am I going to need to make to provide the lifestyle that I want to have? And can I get that in teaching? Also kind of demystifying, this is kind of a pretty common thing that we hear a lot, but, we don't necessarily look at year after year. And in Louisiana right now, they're not making little amounts of money. I've had students where I ask them this question, they're like, how much do you think a teacher makes? And they're like, I don't know, like $28,000. And in Louisiana, it's really closer. It's in the 40s, right? Starting. And granted, from when you start teaching in the 40s to when you retire, 20, 30 years later, you might only be making 60, 65. But that is, kind of the actual reality rather than whatever their family might be saying that might just be based in, those urban legends, right?
Yeah, the immediacy effect. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Sam. That was great. Does anyone else want to share something that they talked about?
So I got excited when I saw this. I was like, oh, it sounds like they need to set like a healthy boundary with their parents. So like I immediately went to like wellness coaching mindset, and then went to like building those healthy relationships, and really communication is like a big key in that. So like just kind of coaching that student through like, okay, how can I prioritize like my wellness, dimensions of wellness, which occupational wellness is one of them. So like if that brings them joy and like really aligns with their values in that career, like they just need to communicate that with their parents and kind of, set that boundary with them. So that's kind of where my head went at. And I think that's kind of what we talked about in our group. So I got excited when I saw this.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, and I loved it. Yeah, even talking about boundaries and even what Sam said, just some of this is just saying, hey, this is really hard. I noticed this, like this is challenging, right? Of course, not every family dynamic is the same, and we have a lot of different cultural impacts or all these other different pieces that make that conversation maybe really easy or really challenging. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Maybe one more and we'll jump into the last one. One more comment. Awesome. Let's keep going. Due to time, I do want to have this a couple minutes at least for this next case study, but just due to time, I don't think we'll do breakout rooms, but we'll just chat as a group. So do a couple minutes over, but we'll be okay with time. So whole nother experience, right? And as you're reading this, feel free to share how you would approach this. But you speak to a medical student org on campus, maybe you're presenting or something, right? After that meeting, the organization's president, who's a top medical school candidate in their sophomore class, approaches you and says, I just finished my first week as a scribe. This is my first real medical job experience, and it wasn't what I thought it would be at all. Does this mean I should pursue a different path? Yeah, sorry, because of time, we won't do the breakout rooms again, but hopefully got to have some great conversation. Anyone feel free to share what are some perspectives, tools, resources that you would use in this conversation?
Well, I think I would probably try to ask some deeper questions here and start to ask some things around like, well, what do you mean that it wasn't at all what you thought it was going to be? And why are you thinking that you need to choose a different career path now, or questioning that? What the job function or the environment or the interactions that you had with people? And I think that might inform some deeper conversations and explorations.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Josh. That was great, right? Really kind of almost with this situation, maybe it seems like getting at some of the details would be really helpful, right? Yeah. Like you said, what were you expecting, or what did you notice, or what was different, right? Maybe you had an idea of what the medical field would be in your head, and maybe this just wasn't meeting the bar, right? Maybe there's a reason for that in a role like this. So yeah, getting at some of those details. Anyone else? Any other thoughts that you have with this kind of situation?
My first thought was, what things did they like or not like about it? What was the experience like for them, other than it wasn't what I thought it would be? Like, kind of just digging a little deeper, saying, okay, well, what did you not like about it? What did you think that it was going to be that it didn't fit the bill? Or, is there anything about it that you did like? And then you can kind of pursue that.
Yeah, and almost, I was putting it in a different way, right? Kind of focused on, oh, what did you like? Yeah, I like that. Maybe one more person to share. I think this is a pretty common situation. Maybe not always for medical, but maybe something. Anyone else?
I think maybe if part of their issue was, the scribe part of it, reminding them that like that's just temporary, and then the rest of the medical field, is maybe what they're more interested in. So they have to get through that first part to get to what they really want to do. So just reminding them that that's temporary, and then the lights at the end of the tunnel.
That's right. Yeah. So just giving some perspective. Yeah. And some of that is just industry knowledge. Some of that is just kind of knowing, this is probably where you start, and you're going to be very successful probably, but you could pivot, but it probably is just that you're expecting to do a lot more, and you're not quite there yet just because you're just starting out. So yeah, great perspective. Yeah. And with all these different case studies, all these different scenarios, I think what a lot of you shared today is just listening, asking the right questions, and really just trying to get the students to reflect and share, and just listen for what you hear. And a lot of that kind of goes back to values and some of those circles that we talked about. So I encourage you with this. This work is very valuable, very fun, very challenging, but I think it overlaps a lot of what we do just in different ways. So thank you for your time, and always reach out at any point. We love this conversation, and whatever we can do to kind of make you feel empowered and comfortable. And the work that you do with students is great. A lot of you are interacting with students on a very frontline or holistic kind of approach that we might even not get to see ourselves in the Career Center. So your roles are really valuable for this work.